Hello and welcome along to another episode of the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined once again by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
Not too bad, Sean. Good weekend. I suppose a lot of weekend of sport, but mainly focused on the Premier League this weekend.
Yeah, like you said, football is probably at the forefront of everyone's minds. Every Premier League game, it seems like every day there's a Premier League game. And with the Champions League to come next month, it's an interesting time considering we don't know whether the Euros is going to go ahead as planned or what way it's going to go ahead. But yes, football is definitely at the top of everyone's minds at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose taking it to the game of the weekend, which was Arsenal-Manchester United, what were your overall thoughts on that, I guess, from both sides? 0-0 draw, but I suppose it was probably better than some of the other 0-0 draws between the big six sides.
Yeah, Manchester United being a part of most of them, I still think they're missing something that they, are going to challenge for the title maybe even next year. The record, the performances have been very flat. They've just kind of, if you like, taken the draw and when you go to Anfield and the Emirates, I don't think you're probably going to get too easier gains in turn if you look at the lineup of both sides, especially this year and with where Liverpool are and I suppose with some of the players Arsenal have, I don't think you're going to find an easier chance to win there. I suppose if you're a Manchester United fan, you're definitely disappointed with how you played and how you played at Anfield a few weeks ago and everything that's happened, because there seems to be a real big opportunity for Manchester United to do something this year, and they haven't won a trophy for a number of years, and to even just compete for a title is something they haven't done in a long time. So you felt as if they could have got 2 wins, especially when Liverpool were down. Liverpool weren't always going to be down for a long time. And the same with Arsenal. Arsenal missing 3 of their better players, and probably 3 of their best players. So I think Manchester United will look at that with a lot of regret. Even with just how Arsenal played, I thought Arsenal were pretty poor, gave the ball away a lot of times. The first half, especially the last 25 minutes, Manchester United got on the ball a lot more. Maybe that with Pogba going back into central midfield and Martial, maybe more of an attacking lineup. I even think with that, when having Fred and McTominay is a really good kind of 2 defensive midfield partnership. It's the kind of one you'd play against the City again or Liverpool, where you're going to be under pressure and you're going to need 2 in there as opposed to 1 and maybe a Pogba. So I think even that, like, I don't think Arsenal are 8th or 9th for a reason. I think United could have attacked that game more, and maybe Ole Gunnar is happy with a point. Maybe he's just hoping for another year of Champions League football and building on again. But there's question marks over a lot of those Manchester United players, whether they're going to move on or whether they're going to be able to attract big names in to replace maybe a Lindelof or a Fred in midfield. So I think, yeah, like I said, it was a bit of an opportunity missed for Manchester United, and it's definitely a better point for Arsenal than it was for Manchester United.
Yeah, I suppose sticking with maybe some of those Manchester United players, I guess maybe someone like Paul Pogba, how do you see that playing out in terms of what's going to happen there? Because he's starting to play a lot better, obviously, in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I think he's probably, no one knows really Paul Pogba's character, but I get the feeling he's a lot more loved and he's a lot more integral to everything Manchester United do, and that appears to be playing a massive role in not only his form but the team's form. And it's someone like Paul Pogba, I think everyone knows the quality he has. You don't win a World Cup and be integral to that World Cup side and be one of the leaders in it to not be a good footballer. And I think that's always been a problem with him. He hasn't really got on with the managers at Manchester United, and Ollie has finally found to get a tune out of him. And I think now it's just, Paul Pogba on his day is probably one of the best midfielders in the league, but when he doesn't play, and there's a difference between, I think when Gundogan for Manchester City puts in a 7 out of 10 performance, it's better than Paul Pogba's 7 out of 10. But I think if he puts in a 10 out of 10 and Paul Pogba puts in a 10 out of 10, I think Pogba's performance is better. And I think that's just that level of consistency that probably Paul Pogba is missing in his game. And I thought at times there, even when he started to make a few crossfield passes out to the left to Luke Shaw, it just didn't happen too regularly. And in fairness to someone like Bruno Fernandes, how many times did Bruno Fernandes get the ball and from central midfield and be able to run at Arsenal's two centre halves, and that was very limited, very rare. Arsenal kind of blocked off that avenue, and Manchester United just couldn't get the ball through into Bruno Fernandes enough. So I think, Paul Pogba, Manchester United should be kind of looking. He's one of them. I think he should be looking to build the team around. But if you have what's happened a lot this season, especially at the start of the season, where he wasn't playing and he's on the bench and he's injured, and there's just a problem around him, I think he can get to a similar situation to maybe what Mesut Ozil is, where he signs another big contract or a long contract. He's been around a football club. He's got a lot of power in the dressing room, and it just ends badly, doesn't it? So I think it's a massive kind of few months for Paul Pogba. It's a massive few months for Manchester United and trying to get that right. It's a similar problem to maybe what Liverpool have in Gini Wijnaldum with his contract issue. Because they know if Liverpool will be looking at maybe an Arsenal in terms of the Ozil deal, and looking at Wijnaldum thinking, if we give him maybe what he wants and we overpay him, and then a year's time when Van Dijk's contract is up, or when Thiago wants a pay rise or whatever it is, and then they're under pressure straight away because they've set the precedent with Wijnaldum, and it's a similar one to what Pogba is going to have at Manchester United if they want to keep him, which you'd imagine Ole Gunnar will want Paul Pogba.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose last thing, is there any danger of a Manchester United falling back into the pack towards maybe, challenging for a top four? It just seems like the top four has gotten away from it a little bit. So City, United, Liverpool, Leicester are a good bit clear of, say, West Ham, Spurs, Chelsea, Everton, Villa, Arsenal. Any danger United could fall back from City, Liverpool and then be focused on a top four, or have they got enough points already and enough good players there that they should have enough for a top four?
Yeah, I think they have enough points. I think, to be honest, I think it will hinge on their away games they have left. To go to the Etihad, to go to Tottenham Stadium, to go to Stamford Bridge. I think the only team who I see making some sort of massive push and raising it up a level is probably Chelsea. I think they've got the players. They've proven at the start of the season that they can go on a good run, that they have maybe the defense, if you like, at times to push that. I think three at the back kind of suits them. I think it suits them in midfield. So it's one of them where you'd expect Manchester United to get top four, and with the players they have, they really should be top four. I mean, if you look at the quality that's on show, obviously the signing of Bruno and what he's done, I mean, he's raised the expectations of Manchester United up again. So I definitely think they should be third. I think they probably are the best of the rest. I think Leicester will struggle if Ndidi's out for another while and Vardy's out. I think they're going to struggle at times, and maybe that opens the door for a Chelsea, or maybe even a Tottenham again. You don't know how long Harry Kane's out for, but I definitely think Manchester United should finish third. They are the best of the rest, and whether they can mount a sustained title charge, it'll be interesting. Obviously, the Liverpool Man City game on Sunday will tell a lot, but I think Manchester United, they're out of the Champions League, they're in Europe, and they got the FA Cup. It'll just be interesting to see what way they balance it and what Ole sets his priorities are, because I'm sure he'll want to win a trophy some way or other, whether it's the FA Cup or the Europa League.
Yeah, they've had that run of semi-final defeats, haven't they? Quick word on Sky Sports coverage, maybe the match. You wanted to have a quick word maybe on the Gary Neville, Martin Tyler duo. I guess I suppose maybe Martin Tyler's come in for a lot of criticism on social media for that PSG clip. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It's actually in the show description there, notes, if anyone wants to have a look at it. Thought a little bit harsh, to be honest with you. I thought it was a nice moment, maybe Gary, but overall point maybe on Gary Neville commentating on Manchester United games. You're not a fan of that overall, or maybe a Jamie Carragher commentating on Liverpool games.
Yeah, like I got a thing about that, especially with Jamie Carragher. Well, like, for example, I much prefer the Gary Neville on West Ham Liverpool. Kind of gives more of a balanced outside. You're looking as everyone else is at Liverpool as kind of an outsider, a neutral. You can get caught in that balance, which Carragher has, especially where you don't want to be pro Liverpool and you maybe tend to go the other way. And he's actually spoken about it quite a bit, where you're seen as anti-Liverpool by Liverpool fans. And I know he came under criticism for the Pickford and Van Dijk tackle.
Same with Gary, actually, I think it was the Burnley game. A lot of United fans were giving out that he was gone the other way. Yeah.
It's just it's probably a hard one to commentate on a game where a club you played for your whole career, and it's I find it hard, and it probably comes into play when you're watching Arsenal, Manchester United or something, and Gary Neville he's kind of just, speaking as a Manchester United perspective, and that's what he knows. And probably the best balance might have been the Liverpool United game where you'd Carragher and Neville. But I just think everything's kind of brought into focus when you're watching, 7 or 8 games a weekend really, and you're watching different commentary teams. And obviously you've got the likes of John Champion and Ali McCoy who do a lot. The Amazon games have been very highly praised, and BT at times have been known for being quite poor with their commentary, but everything is almost heightened with that. But no, it's I think you see it a lot more on Twitter because fans obviously aren't in the ground to help with the atmosphere at games, and maybe that's another reason for that. But it's just, I suppose it is good to see a lot of football on TV, so you can't necessarily complain too much.
No, I guess the kind of problem with Sky, I guess, is Neville and to a certain extent Carragher are so far ahead of maybe everyone else they have on the panel that it's very hard. And Gary Neville is the best co-commentator they have, so I guess I personally enjoy listening to him. But give us an example from the Arsenal United game that maybe Gary Neville might have been just focused purely on Manchester United, maybe subconsciously, and wasn't talking enough about Arsenal's play. Was there any examples that spring to mind like that you can give us an example where Neville's probably focused too much on United, just in terms of his commentary, like more than anything?
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe when I think Smith Rowe came off over the far side and Martin Tyler kind of mentioned him as if it was almost, I think, a cue for Neville to come in, and Neville didn't really say anything, and it just kept going, and Martin Tyler just moved on from it. And then other times, Martin Tyler again talked about something that's happened, and then all of a sudden Gary Neville goes to Manchester United and Pogba, and that's what obviously he's probably done more notes on, or he knows more about, and he knows the inside track on a lot of things. And yeah, look, I don't want to complain too much about it because it's I loved Gary Neville on commentary. I thought the West Ham Liverpool game was really good, but I just think.
What were your thoughts on his Thiago comment now in the first half? I know that didn't turn out too well. When he was saying that Thiago's a big reason that Liverpool are not breaking teams down. He said that during the first half. Now, obviously, that didn't end too well, and a lot of people on Twitter were ready to either back him up or give out about it. What were your thoughts on that, actually? Just moving on to the Liverpool game then.
I think with Thiago, Thiago makes Liverpool probably a little bit easier to defend against, but I think he makes Liverpool a more rounded side, a better side. It's something that people have said about Jurgen Klopp teams for too long. It's kind of a little bit basketball-y. It's frantic. They're pressing there, and if you look at the numbers of teams pressing and the intensity of it has gone out with how many games they're playing. And I think he's helped Thiago, and I think he could help them in a title charge because they just keep possession a lot more. It's a lot more sticking to position. Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold are high and wide as opposed to kind of coming from deep and making these relenting runs, and that can make them, again, you ask Burnley and they probably prefer to defend against that. They're more coached to defend against that than a frantic Liverpool where they're pressing, even in midfield and central midfield, they're pressing every touch you make. And Thiago makes them a more rounded side. They're going to be able to win more football matches because of Thiago. But I think it'll probably just take a little bit of gelling. Again, Liverpool are probably, Firmino hasn't been at his best. Thiago hasn't played in the midfield with Henderson or Fabinho. And you'd imagine, I think if it's one of them, I think Thiago was playing with Fabinho in central midfield. I think you'd probably see a Curtis Jones playing, who's a little bit more of a number 10 or a number 8 who's more attack minded. So I think I wouldn't say Thiago's the reason they've been losing games, but I think he's made them a more rounded side. They keep the ball better. They're not afraid to go large periods of the game where nothing happens for a couple of minutes, and they're just keeping ball where, a year ago, 18 months ago, that would never have happened with Liverpool. It would have been frantic. They would have been, getting the ball to a Van Dijk and maybe playing it over the top or playing it down one side, and then Trent Alexander-Arnold switches it to Robertson and all of a sudden he's got space. Everything now kind of comes through the centre of midfield. It comes through Thiago, and you're starting to see a little bit more of him. I think he's almost playing a little bit more of an advanced role now because he's playing with Milner and Wijnaldum, and there was a bit of a diamond going on the right. So he was a little bit more further forward, and you might be able to see him maybe attack the game a little bit more. But I think he makes Liverpool a better side with him in it, and it's just hard to judge, without Van Dijk, without Fabinho, without Henderson in midfield to maybe find a partnership that works in a way forward. But he's definitely, he was a brilliant signing, and I think we probably won't see the best from this year in terms of his actual impact. But I think overall, Jurgen Klopp would much rather that style of football this year, where you're controlling games a lot more and you're not as frantic and you're not, putting as much pressure. And it's just going to take a little bit of time to gel it with, in terms of offensively. I think Liverpool's game with Thiago kind of revolves around getting the first goal and not having a team defend for something for so long. And that's been a problem for Liverpool, scoring goals, but scoring goals early and killing teams off. You look at West Brom, where they didn't kill West Brom off, and it was 1-0 for so long. I think if Liverpool, that's probably where Thiago will show what his value is, when Liverpool are 1 or 2-0 up in games and Thiago's just cruising around midfield and Liverpool are just relaxed on the ball, as opposed to, looking to score. And that's probably something that has been labelled at their midfield at times. They can't keep the ball as well as a Manchester City's midfield, or, maybe a Chelsea's midfield, or Tottenham, whatever it is. And I think Thiago adds so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's using a lot of energy, or sorry, a lot less energy if they're passing the ball and keeping, their possession stats are up, that sort of thing. They're 4 points behind Manchester City. They have a home game against Brighton during the week. City away to Burnley, could drop points there. There could be 2 or 4 points going into that game on Sunday, which is the 4:30 game, which will be be some game. And I presume Gary Neville will be commentary, so it'll be a nice neutral feel there. But that's a massive game, and Liverpool can win it or even draw it and still keep that 4 points. They're right in this title race, and considering who they're missing, as you mentioned yesterday, they were missing Mane, Firmino came off the bench, they were missing Fabinho, they were missing Van Dijk, obviously. They were missing serious amount of players, Liverpool, and they still went out, and that second half performance I thought was very good. So there's a bit of a title race potentially still on. Like City are heavy favourites in the bookmakers, but Liverpool are still in this title race.
No, absolutely. I think Liverpool are more than still in it. I think with the year that's going to happen in terms of games, and Manchester City again having that conundrum with Europe, and the difference is with Man City, I don't think they're going to lose a heap of games. A couple of years ago when they lost to Wolves by conceding a few goals and losing to Palace by conceding a few goals, I don't necessarily see that performance in Man City anymore. And maybe if it is, it's a one-off and it's a blip, and it's it's one of those days where every shot goes in that you can see it almost like Liverpool at Villa. But I definitely think there's a title race, and I definitely think Liverpool are good enough to win it. And I think they'll like coming from behind this year a little bit more. Like I said, if it's 4 points by Sunday night, or 2 points, or whatever it is, I think Liverpool will still feel confident, as long as it's not 7, as long as they don't lose on Sunday. And again, this is the
It's one of the it might be a must win, or might feel like a must win game. That game, say it's 4 points going in, but a draw isn't the end of the world, because we're only just over halfway. Although you'd really want to win it, because just purely on Liverpool's injuries, and if they can get 1 or 2 lads back. But I guess it's a not lose game for Liverpool more than not win or must win.
Yeah, I think it's more of a not lose, because you can come back from 4 points or 2 points, like I said, or you can't really come back from 7. And this is where Liverpool have been really good. I go back to that Fulham game where with 20 minutes to go or 15 minutes to go, he takes off Salah, or I think it was a Firmino, and you kind of know that in mind, because they played Tottenham during the week and they beat Tottenham 2-1, and at the time Tottenham were near the top and they were considered rivals, but City were a bit below. And I think Jurgen Klopp will know that, they should beat Brighton. There's no excuse for not beating Brighton. But say if they draw, for example, it's not the end of the world if you go out and beat Man City. It's one of them where they've got that they're in a position where you wouldn't say they're comfortable, but they know if they don't lose to Man City on Sunday, they're very much in a title race. I think it'd be unbelievable if they beat them, because like Man City have been on a brilliant run. They look a lot more solid. I think it's a similar pattern where they aren't, again, Man City aren't as frantic. They control the game a lot more, and it's a lot more kind of rigid and slow, and a slow build up. You're not seeing the sort of bursts of speed that they showed against Chelsea. And I think that's where they're kind of saving it almost for the big game. Like Man City against Chelsea is everything that Pep Guardiola wants, everything his teams stand for. But against Sheffield United, they know they just need to get 1 or 2, and that should be job done. And I think that's teams have found it harder this year, I think, more than ever, to break down those low blocks and score 3 and 4 goals against a team. Look at Man City against Sheffield United, who are fairly decent defensively. One little mistake from Sheffield United and Jesus has a tap in. whereas you don't see an awful amount of that. Maybe Ramsdale had a great game for Sheffield United, I get that, but I think teams are maybe struggling against the low block a little bit more this year, and that's why you're seeing those kind of 1-0 wins and 0-0 draws, that or 1-1 performances like Liverpool and West Brom. So I think there's a lot going to happen from now until May, is it, or whenever it's over. If you don't really know it, it's keeping track of. But I definitely think it's a title race, and to be honest, it's a little bit. You don't really know what way it's going to go. I said Man City would win the league at the start of the year. I'd still stay they'd win the league, but I don't think it's going to be as easy or as foregone as times go by, because just with the amount of games, you're going to find a slip up here or there, and there's a lot of teams where, you look at the bottom three. If any of those bottom three are to stay up, they're going to have to win football games, and they're going to have to beat big sides, and that is going to be a crucial factor in what happens at both ends of the table, really.
Yeah, last word on it. I guess I don't want to get too much of a City Liverpool preview, but I guess the two different styles of play, they're both trying to keep possession a lot more. I know that was City's game, but like you said, it's a lot slower. That's almost a fascinating battle already on Sunday. Those first 15 minutes, who's going to be dominating the ball? Will it be City that it tends to be in those games? Maybe fit 60-40, I guess, or maybe Liverpool with the likes of Thiago in midfield can really compete for possession, and maybe, particularly that it's at Anfield, can dominate that possession. So I guess it'd be fascinating to see how that plays out. Will it be another one of those 0-0 stalemates and with the big six sides? Or
yeah, I actually think it could be a frantic first 10 or 15 minutes with both sides trying to maybe disrupt both teams, because they know if they get one goal, both sides tend not to concede an awful amount recently. Even if you look at Liverpool's makeshift back line, they got the best goalkeeper in the world. Manchester City missing key personnel as well. De Bruyne, Jesus has come back. Aguero, no one knows really about Aguero, and Manchester City have been, missing with COVID and stuff. But I think they've found a back two, if you like, two centre halves, and Cancelo. They probably know their best team, Man City. And Liverpool, again, with injuries, you don't really know your best team, but I think Pep Guardiola might have more of an understanding. I think it's going to be a frantic first 10 or 15 minutes, and you'll probably see the legs tire. But, both sides will have one, when they're playing on Tuesday or Wednesday, they'll have Sunday in mind, and they'll be, recovering and making sure players aren't overloaded, even if it means, Pep Guardiola dropping a point to Burnley, or Jurgen Klopp dropping a point at home to Brighton, which, for Liverpool, it'd be more of a disastrous result. Pep Guardiola has Manchester City in a position where a drop point to Burnley is probably okay, and they can go and, make sure they don't lose to Liverpool.
yeah, absolutely. So I suppose last thing from this weekend, there wasn't much sport on. I guess the Six Nations coming up next week will kind of add to it, and the Super Bowl next week. So there's actually a busy weekend of sport. Dublin Racing Festival, full horse racing. So it's probably the biggest weekend of the year already. Coming up next weekend. But I suppose finishing off on this weekend, quick word on Patrick Reed in the golf. You were watching a bit of that, I presume. What were your overall thoughts on maybe the coverage of it? I know the Sky on Sunday didn't mention it much, to be honest with you, bar the interview at the end, which was kind of a bit perplexed by. But yeah, quick word on Patrick Reed.
Yeah, first of all, you got to mention how good a golfer he is, and that probably gets lost with a lot of things. I mean, to win around 30 points, to shoot 14 under, and to have a 5-shot lead over the rest of the field, and
just he did it by not hitting greens. I think he was like 73rd or something. Correct me if I'm wrong on the greens, but anyone that position or below, 0.7% of winners on the PGA Tour have been that position and below and won. Just shows you how incredible his short game was around that course.
Yeah, and you've seen it for a long time, and he's one of those figures that you always think, oh, is he actually good for golf or is he bad for golf? I think he adds something to it. He's very much his own man, his own sort of way of playing, and not afraid to be on the other side of the law, if you like, or maybe bend the rules. But he's someone that is going to win more majors. To anyone who wins at Augusta, you always think, they've got the ability to win anywhere. I think if you can win at Augusta, I know there's been times where maybe a Charles Schwarzer, where Rory has thrown it away, or a Danny Willett with Jordan Spieth. But I think if you compete at Augusta and you win there, I think you've got the skill set to play well anywhere, because you've got to have that imagination of recovery. And that's what Patrick Reed has, and his short game is phenomenal. You'd imagine he's probably the first name on the American Ryder Cup list for this summer or this winter. So there's a lot of things to look out for. Everything is steering up for a really good Ryder Cup. Paul Casey winning the in Dubai, Paul to getting a top 10. Those kind of things I'm sure will help Team Europe, because they're going to really be up against it. I know every year you say that, but just with the level of performance these American guys are having, your Tony Finau, who still hasn't won, but he's continuing top 10. Patrick Reed, who's just playing golf the same with Dustin Johnson on another level at times. So I think it really is shaping up. But some good performances from Europe recently. Francesco Molinari with another kind of top 10, top 12. Victor Hovland, it'd be interesting to see what happens with him in terms of points. He could be one that misses out just on the points list. But I'm sure, look, Patrick Reed will be playing for America, and he will be the key guy that Paul Harrington will have to look out for. Because, like I said, he played some unbelievable golf. And at times, like you said, he probably didn't play his best golf in terms of hitting greens. He still won by 5 shots, and he still showed why, he is a champ. He's a major champion, but he's probably, a future winner again of a major.
What about the cheating incident then on Saturday? So just to explain the rules, so obviously if your ball gets embedded when you hit the shot into its own pitch mark, you're entitled to free relief. But I think the kind of unwritten rule is you kind of call over your playing partners or your rules officials. Now, Patrick Reed's kind of just assumed it based on a volunteer and kind of did it himself and seemed to improve his lie. What were your thoughts on that? And then maybe the Rory McIlroy incident, are there comparisons between the two? And is it the case that a lot of golfers are, were doing that over the weekend, because the cameras are only there following Rory and Patrick Reed? There weren't too many cameras out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there probably is that bit where, you go around the European tour, anywhere really, and there's probably a couple of cases of that where you just probably take a casual lax to it. I think with Patrick Reed, it's probably the fact that it's a recurring thing, and maybe people are out to get him. I think that's kind of been labelled at times in the media, and maybe the media are out to get him. And I just think he's a history of it. And when you have a history, everyone's going to keep an eye on it, aren't they? And they're going to make sure you're doing things by the book. Look, it's one of them where I think he's at times he'll from now on he should always call in a rules official. I think that's what he's going to have to do, because people are really making sure he doesn't cross that line, and he has been, as I said, known to do it in the past. And Rory, again, it's probably just lax on their part. Normally, in fairness to those guys, normally when you hit it 10 or 15 yards offline, you're into the crowd, and the rough is kind of trampled down. But normally there's marshals there, there's rules officials there already making sure everything's okay if you're offline that little bit. So it's probably hard as well without fans, but no, it's something that is going to follow Patrick Reed for his whole career, I think. And at times it's going to take away from his golf. And at times it's going to affect him in big moments when, he's playing in a big major tournament. For example, if he's playing in the PGA of Valhalla and you've got the whole Kentucky fans not happy with him, or, know about his history with kind of, I wouldn't call it cheating, but his history with the rules, then he's, it is an interesting one. But he is, like I said, he's a phenomenal golfer. Seems to be consistent as well. He was probably something where before he might have been a little bit more erratic. You saw him at Wentworth, how consistent he was, just, being bet by Tyrrell Hatton, who's playing some unbelievable golf. But he is really, really firing Patrick Reed, and he does tour the world, and he wants to get better at the game, and he's really driven to prove people wrong more than anything. You see other players and they're probably playing for fun, they're playing for prestige, they're playing for money. I think Patrick Reed is always playing with that, knowing that it's him and his caddy and probably his wife against the world. And he's proved that. But he does need to be careful with the rules and with rules officials, because it's going to be something that really is going to be looked at every time he picks up a golf club, and it's something that is going to come back and bite him again. And it's not the end of this kind of saga, if you like. And with Rory, again, it's probably one of them where, you're looking at Patrick Reed's history and you're always thinking, is he doing this deliberately? Is he gaining an advantage? And it's probably just one of them where come the weekend when you're leading and you're leading by a couple of shots and everyone's looking at this going, yeah, well, he's trying to get an advantage to win, and that's probably where the criticism has come in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll leave it there at Tackling Sport social media to get us subscribe on the bottom right. I think if I'm pointing in the right direction to us on the YouTube channel. And we'll be back on Thursday for Premier League predictions and a busy weekend of sport as well. The Super Bowl, as I mentioned, Dublin Racing Festival, and of course the Six Nations starting. So sport is back, Sean. Looking forward to that over the weekend.
Yeah, and it's February, which means Cheltenham next month is here, and a lot happens in February, March with Champions League, the Six Nations, like you said. So we'll be ready for it here.
We'll be back. Absolutely. So yeah, at Tackling Sport, as I mentioned, have a great week. Enjoy the sport next weekend, and we'll chat to you during the week.